Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Wednesday, November 27th, 2024. I'm your host, George Kurt, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. Cody, happy early Thanksgiving to you.
Yeah, man. Happy Thanksgiving Eve. Getting ready. Already starting to dream about all the food, the mashed potatoes, the mac and cheese. But more importantly, that 3-game slate on Thanksgiving always hits different, even if you got to watch the madness that is the Cowboys and Giants.
Is madness the word? Frustration? Sadness, depending on if you're a fan of them or not at this point?
Does it feel any better if you are a fan?
No. It feels worse, probably, but
I mean,
I
they got
love
that win. The Cowboys got that win, and Jerry Jones is like, well, we're not going to rule out re-signing Mike McCarthy.
you're not helping them feel any better.
I know, but I'm just saying. Mike
Well,
McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers coming to Dallas 2025.
could you imagine? It's not going to happen. We talked about how Dak is not going to leave there, but
I didn't say he was going to leave.
that would be even more ridiculous. So we're gonna let this one slide until an off-season conversation when #RogersWatch returns. Until then, make sure you are following us at the Couch GMs on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. We are live normally Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 East on Facebook and YouTube, but obviously Wednesday, because of the holiday tomorrow, we're here with you answering your questions, helping you get ready for the Thanksgiving slate and beyond for week 13. So make sure if you're tuned in, drop your questions in the chat and we'll get to them as we go through. In the meantime, Cody, why don't we sit back, relax, and chat? More Daniel Jones news. Speaking of them Giants, after they dropped him, we talked about that on Monday. He has now signed with the Minnesota Vikings practice squad, kind of exactly where we thought it was going to end up. We said Minnesota and Baltimore were the top two, but a practice squad signing is expected, giving him flexibility to move elsewhere if a quarterback injury occurs.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this 2 days ago. It seems like the most sense. He's on the practice squad to give him even more flexibility if something comes up down the line. But I think it's a great fit with Kevin O'Connell. I talked about it on the last show. I think it also gives an opportunity to get an early preview as someone they want to bring back next year because J.J. McCarthy is still dealing with some injuries and might not be ready to go to start the season. And Sam Darnold's going to want a contract. So I think it's a win-win-win for everybody, except maybe Sam Darnold's chances of getting said long-term deal in Minnesota, which were never great to begin with.
Yeah, you would think they would still kind of stand. Daniel Jones wouldn't affect that too much. If they were still interested in signing him long term, I don't think this would really affect that too much. But no, good chance if they like what they see out of Daniel Jones in practice, and most likely as the emergency third quarterback for now, he has a chance to be the 1-year stopgap for JJ McCarthy at the beginning of next season. So we'll see how that plays out as we play through the rest of the season.
For sure. And then also we got a big slate of games coming up here in week 13. But week 13 means there's only 5 weeks left. And did you know, George, 3 teams could potentially clinch a playoff spot this week?
It's the not even December. I was going to say it's the first week of December. I guess technically some of these games are happening in December, but it's not even December, and 3 teams can clinch a playoff spot.
Yeah. I mean, we'll break it down for you real quick. The easy one, the Buffalo Bills, they can win their division.
Which is even crazier.
But they can win their division with a win and a Miami Dolphins loss on Thursday. Another team in the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 10-1, can clinch a playoff berth. They can't win their division because it's a little bit more competitive with a win and a Miami loss on Thursday.
Or Dolphins are holding some stuff up together here.
Or a Denver loss on Monday. And then you can get into a couple ties. Like a KC ties and Miami still loses, they'd still clinch, but we don't have to go through all those. So the 2 AFC teams that people are wanting to see come playoff time can lock up a spot this week. And then on the NFC side, of course, the 10-1 Detroit Lions, they're on this list because technically they can, but they need to win. There's 6
Mhm.
different scenarios. I'm not going to read them all. They need to win, but they all go something like this: San Francisco loss or tie, plus the Cardinals loss or tie, plus a Seattle loss, plus a Tampa Bay loss. So it's just move
There's a
down the
lot
list.
of things.
Yeah, they need a lot of things. They'll probably beat the Bears on Thanksgiving. We'll talk about that here in a second. But definitely think we'll be talking about the Lions clinching in a week or two when the scenarios get a little less. Do you think they all do it though this week?
All clinch? No, I don't think the Lions clinch, not by their own fault. I do think the other two happen because that Dolphins Packers game is going to be competitive. We'll talk about it in a few minutes, but I think the Packers have an edge.
Alrighty. Well, why don't we just get right into a little fantasy preview then, and we talk about this full slate of games, including the triple header on Thursday.
All right, starting off our Thanksgiving triple header with the 12 o'clock or 12:30 East game. Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions. Lions dealing with some injuries. We talked about David Montgomery, who left the game early and then came back last week with that shoulder injury. Him and Amon-Ra St. Brown are both listed as questionable, but both quote unquote practiced in full on Wednesday. Estimated reports from a walkthrough. So both looking like they're going to be able to play. I know that there was some words of hope from Dan Campbell saying that he expects Montgomery to go at least.
Yeah, I have no concern about Amra or Montgomery playing, and I think if they are playing, they're in your lineup for sure. Now, this Bears defense, they're a little bit, they're playing better since the OC swap on offense and defense. They have the top red zone defense. So it could be a little bit lower scoring of game. And they've had 2 very close NFC North matchups the last 2 weeks. Can they get over the hump on Thanksgiving Day and go into Detroit and shock the Lions on Thanksgiving, all out of what happened last year against another NFC opponent for the Lions? But always a great Thanksgiving when the Lions kick off, whether they're good or bad. Lions on Thanksgiving is like the most purest form of football.
I totally agree. Something about that midday start and seeing that those powder blue uniforms just makes Thanksgiving hit different. Speaking in fantasy, the Bears have been playing better of late. Caleb Williams has kind of been coming back into his groove that you saw early in the season. And we're seeing their wide receivers start to become a little bit more relevant. Lions don't have a great defense against a wide receiver in fantasy. Of the 3, are there any that are like locks to play, would consider playing or not playing?
I think in most cases you were already playing DJ Moore. You haven't been super happy, but I think you continue to play him. It seems like it's been an emphasis to get him the ball in space, a lot of wide receiver screens, quick passes, get him involved. So I think he's the safest one. I know Keenan Allen, he had a touchdown. He had a pretty nice day last week. So I think he's borderline flex play. You expect the Lions to be up and the Bears need to pass it around, get down. I'm still not quite there on Roma Dunze yet for this week, this season so far. He seems to still be third in the pecking order, although he did have 10 targets 2 weeks ago. So he's getting more involved, but not really quite ready to be in your lineups, in my opinion.
I feel like we can compare this wide receiver room currently with all these weapons and not quite enough to go around for all of them to a running back by committee. You're going to have some weeks where, one scores the touchdown and they end up being the relevant one. But I think as we go on, Keenan Allen's time in Chicago is not going to be super long. You're probably going to see a DJ Moore and Roma Dunze led wide receiver room within the next 2 years, if I had to guess.
Yeah, completely agree. I think Roma Dunze has a really bright future ahead of him, him and Caleb, much as I hate to say that as the resident Packers fan.
Exactly. And DJ Moore's not going anywhere, at least for a few years, from what I can tell. Anything else, Bears Lions, before we move on?
No?
Middle of the day, this game a little bit less exciting. Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, Cowboys always have the middle game on Thanksgiving. Giants, got rid of Daniel Jones. We have Tommy DeVito dealing with, I believe it was an arm injury. stayed behind is still supposed to be traveling to Dallas, but is not going to be playing. And Drew Lock is going to get the start for the Giants. Drew Lock versus Cooper Rush. Could you have asked for any more for the middle game?
It sounds terrible on paper, but this might be the game of the day. Like, just because they're so evenly matched, like they could go back and forth a lot in this one. Drew Lock likes to sling it. Like, he'll throw some turnovers, but he'll make some big plays. Malik Neighbors had some questionable things to say after last week. Him and Dayball apparently talked. I'd expect him have a big game or get involved early. And I think the Giants, like, there's not that they might already win, but they've over the last 2 weeks, they've definitely been the quote unquote laughing stock of the league. Why not start to change the narrative against a division rival on a holiday, only game going on against a team who just came off a win, upsetting the Washington Commanders. So on paper, terrible game, but this one could be a lot of fun to watch.
That's a good point. And there is still some fantasy options that you can keep watching as well, which I think always helps some of these games that are not very exciting for playoff reasons or the teams are just not good. But yeah, could be a good back and forth here on this one.
Yeah, I really do like Malik Neighbors this week. Obviously, he's not a guy you're playing on waivers and stuff like that, but he's had a couple down weeks. So you might have had some question marks putting him in your lineup because there is no buys on Thanksgiving week as we get ready for 6 more teams on bye next week. But Malik Neighbors, I think, could be a really strong play going into this game, and all kinds of fun. But I think we also end on a fun matchup. Maybe I'm biased.
Yes, we do.
Packers, Dolphins, Sunday Night Football, Lambeau Field. Doesn't get much better than that, in my opinion. Dolphins, 0-7 with Tua in games under 40 degrees. It's going to be under 40 degrees, something worth noting there. But they seem very adamant that they're going to be able to beat the weather. Romeo Dobbs is dealing with a concussion. He will be out. Jair Alexander, Packers all-pro cornerback, is out. So could mean some big plays for Tyreek Hill. Packers run defense is 50-50 if they show up. So it could be a good game for Devon Achane. What are your thoughts on this game? I know I could talk about it forever.
I think the Dolphins playing in the cold weather is what gets me the most. I mean, we saw maybe a little bit of an crazy game last year in the playoffs when they had to go up to Kansas City and play in 10 degrees or whatever. But there's something behind that. Warm weather track teams don't tend to do well once they have to play in the cold in December. I mean, that's what you got the point. And you've already seen a struggling Tyreek Hill who's dealing with his wrist injury. We saw the resurgence of Jalen Waddle finally last week, but there's a lot of question marks with this Dolphins team for me to feel confident they can go up to Green Bay and beat the Packers, who are playing very well right now.
Do you think Jalen Waddle was that fool's gold? Like, is he back in your lineup? I don't trust it.
I think
I want to get your thought.
I wouldn't force it, especially without buys. But if you're a team that's weak at wide receiver, like what you're going to get, and you could go out there and get 2 this week again. Like, it's just how Jalen Waddle is. But you're also going to have those weeks mixed in probably more frequently than they have been happening, like last week.
That's not saying a lot.
No, because it's happened twice this year, once this year now.
Last week was his first really good game.
Okay, so I would imagine you're probably going to see 1 or 2 more out of him this year. I mean, with that being said, that's not great odds, and you're going into the fantasy playoffs, hopefully, and that's a tough, it's tough for you to be like, please get me, 17 instead of 2, and you have a 1 in 4 shot of that happening, but still.
Yeah, I'm not playing Jalen Waddle. I understand that probably is a positive matchup, especially without Jair. He had a really good week. He got more involved, but I can't do it. But speaking of this matchup,
yep,
Jackson in the chat is asking, "Hey guys, should I start Achane or Jacobs?" So this matchup alone, which one do you want to start?
I feel like the Dolphins' offense runs through Achane.
I agree.
The fact that he has a choice to play one of these, by the way, is actually really good.
I would argue that the Packers' offense runs through Jacobs.
Fair assessment there. I mean, they spread the ball out a lot. as opposed to the Dolphins don't spread the ball out as much, but they are a run heavy team and work off the play action pass. So
Yeah. So I think between these two, I think you have to go with Achan slightly because of the receptions. Josh Jacobs will get more involved, but Achan catches, he gets like 5 targets a game at least as a running back. So definitely think I would have to favor him, but honestly, my question is why not both?
yeah, I would like to see who you got in a flex or who your other running back is. If you're still listening in, Jackson, let us know and we can give you a little bit more of an idea. But the fact that you have a choice to play one, hopefully your team is very solid going into the playoffs. I also lean Achan for this one if you have to choose.
Yeah, but I have to feel like there's a wide receiver in the flex spot or something like that that you could squeak out and get them both in the lineup because Jacobs, I know he's probably going to regress a little bit because he had the 3 touchdown 100-yard day last week that got overshadowed by the monster game from Saquon Barkley, but Josh Jacobs had a really good day, and it's going to be another cold game. He'll probably get 18 to 20 carries, and yeah, Jacobs I think is a really good player, but on this one I have to go with Achan on the slight. But it really hurts me to not just say both.
Exactly. Anything else for Thanksgiving? You full of food, full of football,
Never full of football, never.
but full of food at that
Let's
point.
do 4 games next year. Let's have like a 10 o'clock game like we used to do the old Monday night
The Monday night
double
doubleheaders.
back when they were good.
Yeah, before they were playing 2 games at the same time and whatever else. We do have a Black Friday game for the second year in a row, something that seems to be here to stay as Amazon Prime hosts it and tries to get people out of the stores and onto their website.
Exactly. Marketing 101, it is genius. Matchup not great, but it has the Kansas City Taylor Swifts. So people will be watching.
Exactly. Kansas City Taylor Swift's with, I believe, Taylor Swift in attendance is what it seems to be going, hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. We know the Raiders lost Gardner Minshew last week, and he is out for the season with his broken collarbone. Aiden O'Connell will start with his thumb injury. I guess he has been able to grip the ball well enough to take it go, but it does concern me. Number one, because they already struggled a little bit with O'Connell before, but number two, he's not healthy either. I don't think he's fully healthy.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, like there's not a Raider that outside of Brock Bowers, right?
Because
At
Brock
tight end.
Bowers has been just automatic at this point.
Yeah, but it's the tight end position, so it's often overthought because of how bad it's been for most of the players in terms of fantasy this year. So Aiden O'Connell, Desmond Ritter, Gardner Minshew, doesn't matter. I'm only playing Brock Bowers as it is. So the fact that one's out, the other one's in, I'll have to see if any of that changes. But the big news for me is Pacheco sounds like he is making his comeback on Black Friday.
Ooh. Now, I mean, you and I might differ on this one. I would give Pacheco a go in your lineup if he goes. I don't really like Kareem Hunt, but like we're saying, they could be up big. And if that's the case, there's probably going to be enough carries to go around for both.
Yeah. I mean, if they're like, you know what, it's a shorter week, we want to give him one more week just to be safe and gear him up for the playoff run kind of thing, and he doesn't go, I think you can play Kareem Hunt. But if Pacheco's back in there, I think he is 100% cleared. We'll get his normal workload, and I have Pacheco back in my lineup. And I'm probably not playing 2 Chiefs running backs with no buys.
With no buys. That's the other thing. If you're somebody who still needs that running back with no buys, I hope you can find somebody on the waiver wire to help you out longer term, because even yet after this week, Kareem Hunt's not going to be able to help you anymore.
For sure. But then we go to Saturday, Michigan, Ohio State, obviously a big game. Then we get to Sunday with another full slate of NFL football. Who we got?
Just dropping one college game out of that slate. I don't know. College football playoffs going to be interesting this year, but we're not a college football podcast.
We could be. We kind of are. We talk a little bit about it in the draft. We're like a college football adjacent podcast.
Cool. I'll add it to the logo.
Hey, maybe when the new logo drops next year. Little tease.
Teaser alert over here.
Like I said, next year. Didn't say when, just said next year.
It's going to drop November 27th, 2025.
Heard it here first.
Probably not. Sunday early window starts off with a good matchup. The LA Chargers, it is West Coast team coming east at 1 o'clock.
On a short week.
On a short week. That's a good point, too. They played Monday. They're going to Atlanta to play the Falcons.
Coming off of bye.
Cody's got all this teed up. I thought I was right on top of it, and then he's like, nope, there's this and this, too. And they're banged up. The Chargers are.
They are. J.K. Dobbins got banged up against the Ravens.
He is definitely going to miss this week, and I'm told after this week they would consider him week to week. So that makes it sound like he's going to miss at least 2 weeks, potentially more, with a knee sprain. And this is somebody who's gone through a lot of lower body injuries through his career so far. So never a good thing to hear, but firing up Gus Edwards.
Firing up Gus Edwards. Yeah. I think it's a decent matchup. The Falcons are not great against the run. I mean, they're middle of the tier. They're going to have a lot to prove. So, but we've seen Harbaugh wants to go through the run game, and that's why they brought in Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, so they were familiar with Greg Roman, their offense coordinator. Yeah, if J.K. doesn't go, I think Dobbins is definitely a guy in your lineup. If you need if you were starting
J.K.
relying
doesn't go, Edwards is, yes, got you.
For sure. Like I don't know how, unless you're like my guy Jackson, who's debating between Achane Jacobs and Gus Edwards, then he's not in your lineup. But outside of him, you're going to play Gus Edwards this week.
Agreed. I know I'm in a situation where I've been playing J.K. Dobbins pretty much every single week. Put that priority out there for Josh Jacobs. Now I'm getting mixed up. For Gus Edwards, he's probably going in my lineup this week. Also worth noting, Will Dissly has not participated in practice yet this week. He has been one of the rising stars at tight end, but it's tight end, so you can probably go out there and find something else to replace it if he doesn't go.
For sure. I like that one. And then on the Falcons side, I know they didn't play last week, so they might have forgot them. But not JK. Why am I blanking on Kyle Pitts? Wow. Okay. He's back in your lineup if you need a tight end. But my question for you is Darnell Mooney. A little bit of a drop off the week prior, coming out the bye week. Is he back in your lineup this week?
I still have Achilles tendonitis stuck in the back of my head because CMC has completely ruined that injury for me for the next 3 years at least. But I think he's probably good to go in this matchup. I think I would, start up him, start up London. It's going to be nice to have these Falcons weapons back that we didn't know we missed until we missed them.
That's a good way to put it. And obviously Bijan is in your lineup. Want to move on to the next game?
Yeah, should be another pretty good one here.
Steelers Bengals with no injuries to report. Like, I know the Bengals have not been great. The Steelers are, this is going to be like a good old fashioned, like really good offense with a bad defense versus really good defense with a bad offense. Which side, like iron sharpens iron, which side comes out on top? And can the Steelers rebound after losing to the Browns in the snow globe?
In the snow globe, nice. This is the crossroads for the Steelers, in my opinion, because we've seen them, gutting out wins, and they were undefeated with Russ until this past game, and then they got upset by the 2-win Cleveland Browns. But we've all been saying like they don't look as good as they have been record-wise. So I think this is the crossroads where they're going against a Bengals team that it's divisional, so I'm not worried about them underplaying them, but they're very wishy-washy. But they can go out there and put up a good game in the snap of a finger. Their offense is too good. And it seems like, for the most part, good defenses still can struggle when a team is familiar with you, being the divisional team, the Bengals. So This feels like a rough time for the Steelers to me. It feels like that game that they should win, but they're going to have a really hard time.
Definitely think this would be a fun game. The Steelers and Bengals, they always play hard. So definitely love seeing that. But we got another divisional matchup that on paper is probably not going to be great, but Texans coming off of a bad division loss to the Tennessee Titans, followed by Jacksonville coming back after the bye week, potentially getting Trevor Lawrence back. This is another game. It doesn't sound pretty on paper, but this could be a fun one. And with Trevor Lawrence coming back, it has to make you feel better about a guy like Brian Thomas Jr., who was, a top 12 wide receiver on the year, but he didn't love it when Mac Jones was there.
You didn't love it when Mac Jones was there, but he did have a decent week with Mac Jones going into the bye. I think part of the reason why he was kind of slowing down is because of his rib injury. So now you're, I think, 4 weeks removed from it and had a bye week. So I'm hoping that that's in the rear view now. If he gets Trevor Lawrence back, I mean, this offense isn't going to be prolific by any means, but I think it can bring you back to Brian Thomas being a solid top 20 wide receiver.
Yeah. Do you think he could get back to being that top 10 that we saw, which is crazy because it didn't feel like it because of how bad the Jags were, but they were down. He was the recipient of the targets, the catches, putting up points, not to the level of Jamar Chase, but Jamar Chase is doing, same kind of thing. Bad team. Weird calling the Bengals a bad team. Down, putting up a lot of points.
I think he can be, but I mean, they're also, when you're comparing, you're looking at a top 10 wide receiver is Zay Flowers, a top 10 wide receiver is Jaden Reed. I think falling into that tier is a very good place to put Brian Thomas again.
All right. I like it.
Texans side of the ball, they've really been a struggling team. They should be better. And then I think their defense is kind of keeping other teams in, but their passing offense has been very disappointing. Nico Collins coming back has given them a boost. I don't know if he's really been up to 100% yet. Do you think that we're going to be back to seeing full speed Nico Collins now after getting a game under his belt?
Yeah, it was his second game back last week.
My bad.
So
2 games under his belt.
But yeah, I think he's 2 penalties not even near him away from having monster weeks the last 2 weeks. He had a 77-yard
That's
touchdown
fair. It
called
was the
back.
first play of a game. You're
77-yard
right.
touchdown called back right away. And then the end of the game, they had the touchdown called back that had to make them kick the field goal, and they had missed that. So I'm not worried about Nico Collins. He hasn't been, as dominant as he was just because the touchdowns aren't there, but he's still seeing targets. He's still seeing it. But yeah, I'm not worried about Nico Collins in the slightest.
And then what are your thoughts in a green matchup for Tank Dell, one of the most frustrating players in fantasy this year?
I mean, probably not. I mean, I know he had the big play to start the game against the Titans, but yeah, I don't think you need to play Tank Dell in a week where there's no buys.
Fun story about that one. I was debating between 3 players in a flex spot last week. That one play happens, the group chat. Here comes Tyler saying, "Hey, good thing you should have played Tank Dell." Both the other guys ended up scoring better than Tank Dell did last week.
Who'd
One
you
was
go
Michael
with?
Pittman. I went with Michael Pittman, which was your first gut, Cody. Solid 17-point week out of that one in half PPR.
Hey, sounds like I know what I'm doing. You should listen to us at the Couch Chance podcast. Little humble brag.
So if you want to get Cody's advice here and see if he can help you, drop questions in the chat down there.
Well, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the Texans and Jags. Let's talk about, I don't know, this game. I feel like this game could be a lot of fun too. I feel like a lot of these games could be a lot of fun. But Arizona really dropped the ball last week. But I'm willing to chop that up to being divisional. The Vikings won a close one against the Chicago Bears. Again, chopping it up to being divisional. I think indoors for both these teams, although it is in Minnesota, which is a tough place to play, should be a heck of a lot of fun. And I think Arizona gets back to being that team that we thought they could potentially be before last week.
Arizona's got to play with a little bit of desperation now because that division tightened up a lot and they actually lost the division lead. So, interested to see how they rebound from that. But if they can get Marvin Harrison involved too, because he's been super inconsistent in their passing game. But when he gets going, that offense is nearly impossible to stop, if we're being honest.
Yeah. And I think the thing with the Cardinals too is getting Trey McBride involved. It seems like when he's heavily involved, the Cardinals offense is, humming better. I mean, I think one of the fantasy footballers even put out there that's Kyler Murray's binky. That's his security blanket. That's his safety net. They need to get him involved early and often. Uh, yeah, and I like what the Cardinals are able to do. I think the blitz heavy Brian Flores could get them in trouble with Kyler Murray's legs if he can, skate the pocket a couple times or hit them quick over the middle. So I'm really excited for this game at 1:00 between the Cardinals and the Vikings. But honestly, there's no real injuries to report. So play your guys, play your Justin Jefferson, play your uh, T.J. Hawkins and your Aaron Jones, play your James Conner, play your Marvin Harrison Jr. And heck, even play your Jordan Addison. I know we don't typically like saying chase the points, but he had one heck of a day last week against Chicago.
A lot of good options on games to lock in on if you want to in the 1:00 window. I think this might even lead the pack, but there's so many. I think I'm just sticking with red zone. But
yeah, got to get the Octo box going.
Got to get the Octo box going. Is there actually 8?
There's only 7. So
7, and then they put the studio in the 8th box because they cheat.
Yes.
All right, play your guys in there. We're going to Colts at Patriots. Maybe we're getting a little bit less exciting here, but I think that's the Patriots that we're talking about.
As being less exciting?
Yeah.
Or the Colts? Because the Colts are sneakily still involved in the AFC South race. I think they're only 2 games back on the Texans right now. So
the Texans have been leaving the door open.
For
that
sure.
loss to Detroit, I mean, as it was expected. The Colts had a lot of hype going into that game last week. Like, there was some hope that they could pull off an upset, and obviously didn't pan out, but there's still a lot of hope for them to make that run to the playoffs.
Yeah, Colts, Patriots. I mean, this isn't Brady versus Manning like we were seeing growing up, but Drake May has been a lot of fun to watch as a rookie. He still has some growing pains, but he looks like he could be, a really strong quarterback down the road. Anthony Richardson is starting to come back into his own a little bit. Still see the inconsistencies, but now that he's back in the lineup, I talked about it. I liked Michael Pittman last week. Don't love him this week going up against Christian Gonzalez, who's one of the better young and rising cornerbacks in the league. But you might have to roll him out there in this
Does
one.
not having Josh Downs in the lineup help you with that thought at all?
No, because Josh Downs is predominantly the slot guy anyways. So,
but for targets to go around.
No, doesn't really move me.
So you think it moves the needle more on Alec Pierce, who's kind of a big play guy and, a shot in the dark anyway?
No, it doesn't move me anyways I don't think Josh Downs being inactive changes my perception of what I thought Michael Pittman was going to be. I think the targets will go elsewhere anyways because Pittman plays some in the slot. I mean, that's part of the problem is he plays the bigger slot role, so he'll get those. But when he's on the outside, it's going to go the other way with Christian Gonzalez, unless Christian Gonzalez follows him, which would be one heck of a thing to watch for a sneaky fan that needs something to look for in this game.
Very true. Those targets just have to go somewhere is what I'm thinking. And Downs has been too involved in this offense for his absence to just mean nothing.
Yeah, but I think, his targets doesn't go to one person is what I'm trying to say. Like, if Pittman gets one extra target, Alex Pierce gets one extra target, Jonathan Taylor gets a target out of the background, whoever their tight end now is gets a target, like, isn't noticeable. That's kind of where I'm at with.
I gotcha. That makes sense. I do see we have a fan question coming. We'll get to it in a second. I want to talk to you about Jonathan Taylor for a minute here because he's fallen off a cliff, if we're being honest.
Oh, for sure.
And it's super frustrating as somebody who has been relying on him to see since his injury coming back, he had his one touchdown in that return game against Houston. And other than that, it's been not super great. He did have 100 yards against Buffalo, but single digits the rest of the way around. Or is it bad enough that you're questioning playing somebody else, or is the volume still kind of been there? Are you just going to roll it out and hope that New England can solve some of their issues since they're not a great run defense?
It's going to come down to who you got. You could throw Kyron Williams in the same conversation. Struggling the last couple of weeks, falling down now that other players have come back. But their volume, their opportunity is still too high for me to really move off of them. Unless you, like if you went running back heavy and then still had the Nick Chubb on PUP play when you drafted, now you have Nick Chubb in there and you can swap him in for a guy like that you know is going to get volume. Sure. I don't mind that. But like I'm not sitting Jonathan Taylor to chase Bucky Irvin's points.
Gotcha. I think that's a good way to put that. Fan question then, Cody?
Let's hit it. Tristan says, hey guys, would you trade away Achane for Nico Collins and Tony Pollard? This is a great question. I love it. Question. Also, props to you playing in a league that their traded line is still available because all ours, because of the late week in Thanksgiving this year, happened last week, and it kind of caught us off guard. But back to your trade, Nico Collins and Tony Pollard for Devon Achane. I don't hate this trade. I think Achane is one of those elite tier running backs, though, which makes it a little bit difficult for me. But you're getting Nico Collins, and Tony Pollard has been quietly good over the last couple weeks as well. What does your initial gut tell you, George, on this one?
My initial gut said no.
That was what mine said.
Look at is I'm trying to see how good the schedule is the rest of the way out for running backs against the Titans. Or they are near the top in playoff schedule for running backs. So I'm thinking it comes down to your depth when I'm thinking about it here. Do you need that extra flex play? Do you need that extra running back to play? I guess it'd be extra flex play because you're getting a receiver and a running back for a running back, but you know what I'm saying.
Unless if he's also good at running back and needs a wide receiver spot to fill.
It's true.
Too, like that's something. I think I'm still going to stick with Achane is my final verdict, but I wouldn't like. I'm almost as close to a coin flip as you can for this one. So my gut says Achane, but if your gut says Nico Collins and Tony Pollard, I would try to get something a little bit better than Tony Pollard. I know he's played great over the last couple of weeks, but I think that's he did add in the chat though. He said, let's say I'm flexing either Waddle or Adunze, and he has Debo as wide receiver too, who I think we talked about off air, who like I'm debating benching Debo Samuel because he's played so good. So hearing that kind of flips me back into the way of let me get some points from all around and see if you can reharness that early season Nico Collins. And because really you have 3 flex wide receivers, you don't have a wide receiver 2 with the way Debo's been playing lately. So
3 to 4 of the remaining games for Tony Pollard are solid matchups. So I think seeing your wide receiver situation, seeing you could get some production out of Tony Pollard, I'd go Collins and Pollard.
Cool. Again, thanks for jumping in the chat. Thanks for adding some extra info so we can debate your question. And good luck the rest of the fantasy football season. But George, we got more games to go through. We're still in that early window on Sunday. Seahawks at the Jets. Yep, yeah. That's the exact reaction. Other than, another game coming, West Coast coming east, the Jets coming off of a bye. But
both of these teams are giving me the same frustrations because you look at it and it's like The Jets have all these great weapons. They have Garrett Wilson. They have Brees Hall, but they've been underperforming so badly. And then you look at the Seahawks. They have Kenneth Walker. They have DK Metcalf, and they've been underperforming, maybe not as badly, but there's guys like Garrett Wilson's a great one to put it because he's overall had a great season. But I just look at it and I'm almost like Rodgers is feuding with the Jets. The Jets aren't in playoff contention anymore. Is there a point where Garrett Wilson's just going to kind of drop off and his inconsistency is going to become even worse and you're going to want to bench him? Do I want to get ahead of that and try to bench him when I don't have buys and might have some roster flexibility, someone else to put in there? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't love playing any Jets players right now. Like
Brees probably ends up being a lock.
Brees is DNP with a knee injury coming off of a bye. Although it's only Wednesday, that's the one downfall about doing the show early is a lot can change. Is it a rest day? But that's something to monitor as the week progresses with him. The Seahawks, they don't post their injury report till who knows when. So no idea who practiced in Seattle today.
They're West Coast teams.
But
so Braylon Allen, anybody?
I mean, no. I like him. Like if Brees doesn't go, and I needed a running back, sure, I might consider Braylon Allen. But again, there's no buy, so I feel like I could find someone else. But yeah, Brees maybe, but like this team has struggled outside of it being like a West Coast, East Coast kind of weird game at 1:00 after the Seahawks had divisional matchup. Are we in like trap game? Like if I look up the Seahawks schedule, do they got someone good next week?
They got the Cardinals again.
So they have the Cardinals. So could this be like a trap game? So maybe it's like a closer game on paper.
I could see this. This feels like trap game because especially if the Cardinals win, they still have all that pressure on the Seahawks being at least tied with them. Could pass them again if the Seahawks lose this game.
So yeah, I mean, it's crazy that I'm sitting here saying I don't know how I feel about playing Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, right? Like that just sounds wild coming out of my mouth. But I don't feel great about playing Garrett Wilson or Devontae Adams. I probably still would. Because one of them will probably catch a touchdown. Mm-hmm. Although coming off of bye, I think I like Devontae Adams better.
Just rest with an older receiver? More time for him to get reacclimated with Rodgers?
I mean, they are living together, so.
That's funny.
But
not shocking, but funny. Did he move the Taco Bell into his house too?
That stayed in Las Vegas for now.
Oh, okay. Got it.
But no, but like I just think like this is a chance for the one thing I will say about as someone who has paid more attention to Aaron Rodgers than most people over the dude plays the chip on his shoulder and he definitely hears the noise about the GM getting fired and the conflicting reports about he wants to be back but not with the Jets. Then he doesn't know if he's coming back, but if he does, he wants to be with the Jets. Like he's in the like if they had like that 1 week hoorah kind of like, look, I'm still here. And it's against the Seahawks, a team coming from the West Coast at 1:00 with in between two divisional matchups. Would not be surprised. On that same account, if they go 5 straight 3-and-outs again, would not be surprised.
The most polarizing team in NFL football, the New York Jets.
Yeah, because on paper they should be good. And their defense has struggled mightily since they've let go of Robert Saleh, too. So I think the Seahawks can score points on them. And JSN is definitely in your lineup at this point.
He is. Metcalf is. You're still playing Ken Walker. But they haven't been as frustrating as I was making it sound when I was introing this game. The Jets have been the frustrating one for sure. But there's been a lot of inconsistency there as well.
For sure. One more 1:00 game. Titans at Commanders. Can the Commanders overcome the heartbreak of missing an extra point to lose a game?
Can the Commanders stop the slide as well? They are on a 3-game losing streak.
Very, very much so. The Titans, they had a big win last week. Like this one should be good. Calvin really did not practice on Wednesday. He hasn't practiced a couple times throughout the year, so I'm not too worried about that one. Eckler, he had that brutal concussion at the end of their game on the kick return. So he doesn't look like he's going to play. Brian Robinson was limited on Wednesday, which is good news because he left the game with an ankle injury, but he's been banged up a little bit. But this Titans run defense is really good too. So if Robinson went out, I'm not going to chase the Rodriguez or McNichols. Probably McNichols would be the play, but I'm not going to chase his points because of how good this run defense is for the Tennessee Titans. And all in all, I think this would be a heck of a lot of fun and a good game to watch and really just see like the Titans are on a little bit of a heater right now, especially after last week. Commanders are sliding. And Terry McLaurin saved his day. Like, he looks great. He had 18 points, half point PPR, but he had a 77-yard touchdown at the very end. So that's 14 points right there. So
Yeah, exactly. I kind of feel like this is the Terry McLaurin get right game, even though it doesn't feel like it should be because he just scored 18 half PPR points, but it was in one play.
and I mean,
So
the Titans can be taken advantage of through the air if they can hold up against their pass rush and keep them limited. So should be a fun game to see how this plays. Also, just random fun fact. I know there's been some talks about there. I saw it on Twitter from, I can't remember the source, but it seemed somewhat legit. But nothing official for sure. But it sounds like uh, the old logo of the Redskins and the Chiefs may be coming back, making some appearances for the Washington Commanders, not changing their name from everything I can tell, but a Chief logo does fit the Commander name, so they might do some throwbacks or get that logo back involved. So that is something to monitor as we move forward into the offseason in the next couple weeks.
I know that was something that they were thinking about as they were changing the name, like not completely changing the, vibe of the team, still having something that kind of fit the history. So interested to see if throwbacks come out, if that does come back out. Late window, Cody?
Let's do it. Only 3 games.
Shocker.
I think Buccaneers, Panthers, I've said this a lot, but this could be a sneaky good matchup the way the Panthers have been playing. I know they lost, but the Buccaneers, they're coming off a big win, but it was against the Giants. Like, could they, are they ready for this divisional matchup? All in all,
Sorry, I was being Baker Mayfield.
I knew what you were doing. Mike Evans, full participant, looks like he is back. Again, not the best day for him, but they play the Giants and it was a big run day. Yeah, should be a lot of fun for a divisional matchup. Another team that could play spoiler, if the Panthers could upset the Buccaneers as they try to crawl their way back in the NFC South.
Exactly. And that Falcons team definitely isn't closing the door on anybody. The Buccaneers started the season very well. This is a game that they need if they want to try to get back in command in that division, but it's not going to be easy for them.
Agreed. Not going to be easy. Was how the Rams felt trying to stop Saquon Barkley, but they get the Saints this week.
It's probably not going to be too easy trying to stop Kamara as well.
Let's be honest. At this point in his career, Kamara and Saquon are at completely different levels.
You're right, but it's still not going to be easy.
But let's talk about this Saints game. As the Rams don't have any injury reports, so couldn't tell you how people are failing or doing that. But when it comes to the Rams, we talked a little bit about Kyron Williams being, a bummer, getting volume, but being a bummer when it comes to fantasy. But he's still in your lineup this week. And then, of course, you're playing Puka and Cooper Kupp because they get like 80% of the targets anyways. So that's my Rams take. What do you got on the Saints?
You're starting Kamara and you're starting Taysom Hill more than likely, just for volume. It's tight end, whatever. I'm interested to see how MVS comes out of the bye week. He's not somebody I'm playing. Maybe a DFS play him. But taking over that deep ball role, he's been very successful so far. Seems like that's an important part of the Saints offense to get them going. So we'll see if that continues.
Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. So let's talk about the last game on the Sunday slate. We got the Eagles at the Ravens. Ravens on a shorter week, but they get the late window, so close enough. Eagles coming off their big game on Sunday night, so back-to-back, or not Sunday, it's not a Sunday night game, but back-to-back primetime games because it's the quote-unquote game of the week or whatever CBS, I think, brands their doubleheader second game. But George, you're going to be in attendance for this one.
Yep.
But everyone wants to know, which team are you cheering for? I'm sorry. Can you spell that?
I'm not getting a soundbite of me horribly spelling EAGLES Eagles. So
Thank you for making that. We're going to clip that. But
cool.
definitely think this game, it should be a heck of a lot of fun. It's a great game that you're going to go to the way both these teams are playing. And like, honestly, both these teams go through the running backs. It's
Yes.
leading rusher number 1, followed by the guy who's in second place. Should be a great, fun game all around. You're playing both running backs. And then on the Eagles side, you're playing A.J. Brown. I'm probably not playing Zay Flowers.
With how inconsistent Zay Flowers has been, and with considering that the Eagles have shut down wide receiver ones on a consistent basis all season, it seems like an obvious no-go Zay Flowers week. I'm with you.
Kind of. I mean, the Rams kind of had their way for most of the game. With their
Did Kupp or Nakua really have that big? I guess Kupp did salvage his day with a touchdown at the end.
Yeah, I'm just saying, and obviously they were up big, so that they played a little bit softer too. Like, but
that
Marcus
they had the best time against the Eagles secondary of anybody since maybe week 1.
Probably.
So.
But should be a fun one. The tight ends will get involved. That's the Blankenship versus Mark Andrews matchup will be one to watch for sure.
It will. But I mean, if you tell me that I'm going to a game to watch running backs carry the ball 80% of the time, but it was Saquon Barkley versus Derrick Henry, I'd actually sign up for that. It's going to be a very interesting game.
Yeah, so they're all going to come out and, Lamar and Jalen Hurts both have 500 passing yards each, and the running backs don't touch the ball.
Would still be entertaining if you tell me they're having 500 apiece.
Just Lamar's having 500. Is it getting worse?
Well, I attended a game.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that one. And in terms of fantasy, there's what people you're playing from this one. So let's talk about
actually, before you jump off, Devontae Smith's still not practicing with his hamstring, so he's someone you probably aren't going to be playing.
Okay. Sounds good on not good, but thank you for the update. Sunday Night Football, 49ers at the Bills. We talked about it. The Bills can win their division with a win. There's potential for weather in Buffalo, which I feel like there always is this time of year. 49ers have to win to stay alive, essentially, at this point in the season. I mentioned it. I hinted at once about us talking about it pre-show. Deebo Samuel's out of my lineup for a guy like Ladd McConkey. Like,
it's absolutely crazy.
Especially if Brock Purdy doesn't go.
Especially if Brock Purdy doesn't go. But even if Brock Purdy goes, it's just the offense has been kind of stuck in the mud. And you can see it even since CMC's been back. Like, he's had a couple of decent games. He's broken 10.5 PPR, but his yards per carry are way down. He doesn't look as explosive. This entire offense as a whole doesn't look as explosive right now. And then their leading receiver as of the last few weeks has been Juwan Jennings.
Yeah. I mean, you'll go back and forth. You're still going to say play Juwan Jennings. He's another.
I wouldn't play him without Purdy, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Even though you expect if without Purdy that the opportunity would be there, for them to, catch some points. But I think this is a really interesting game. And like one that the 49ers could surprise some. It's crazy to say surprise some people. Like, I know it's Sunday Night Football. I know the Bills can clinch, especially if the Dolphins lose. But I could see the Bills kind of overlooking the 49ers a little bit in this one, just the way they've been playing. And I would love to see them get back to playing. You didn't like me saying that?
Just because after that Kansas City game, they have eyes set on the first round bye also. So, like, I don't know if they're really going to overlook any game, seeing as they're still a game behind, Kansas City, and that's their goal.
I'm just saying, if you've watched San Francisco the last couple of weeks, team that can barely move the ball, a team that, and you have a chance, you're feeling yourself, have a chance to win your division. Like, it just could be a little bit of an upset, a little bit of we see it all the time. Teams get humbled in the NFL.
So maybe a Chiefs loss and a Dolphins loss is what they need to be like, okay, lock it in. This game can be a lot.
Yeah, I don't even know if it has to do with the losses. I'm just saying, as like, you're coming in feeling good. Hey, I just watched this team barely be able to put up any points. They got smoked 38-10. They might not have their starting quarterback. Are you as fully locked in as you can be?
It's a fair thing to think about.
For sure. Again, that doesn't tell me not to play Josh Allen, not play James Cook, not play, if you want to throw Keon Coleman in your lineup, I think that's a great option as well. I still like the Bills to win this game, for sure. What's that?
Keon Coleman or Deebo Samuel?
Coleman.
That's crazy, but I agree.
Especially because we don't know the status of Brock Purdy. Everything I can tell, they haven't posted their injury report. What I saw was he threw like 4 passes today in practice.
Not a good look.
And for most of the passing parts that the media was available to, now granted, they practice more when the media is asked to leave, but he did all like the runs and the handoffs, but he didn't do any of the throwing. So definitely it's a concerning look, but it is only Wednesday. They have till Sunday. They probably won't tell you unless they have to rule him out on Friday. But it also came out today that Fred Warner, who some people have questioned why he's been playing bad over the last couple of weeks, has been playing through which is their all-pro linebacker, if you're not familiar, if you're just a fantasy guy and don't know defensive players, playing through a broken ankle, fractured ankle.
How?
Not on the injury report.
How?
Also, if you didn't watch the game last week, do you recall them talking about the broken finger that Brandon Allen was playing with and all the close-up of the finger that he broke 2 weeks ago? Not on the injury report. So something is going on.
This is something that's going to get looked at. I mean, so if they have something they're dealing with, but they don't miss any practice snaps, do they have to report it? I think that's a gray area in the rule.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the technicality rule is if you have to report it. I would say you do.
I would think you do.
Because Bijan and the Falcons got in trouble because he showed up with a headache and barely played after a couple snaps and got ruled out. And it was like, well, he showed up with a sickness and you didn't report it. So like
but he even was active and played, but they didn't report it. Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, the production crew knew about the broken finger because they were showing all kinds of shots for it to start the game. Yeah, it's wild how the 49ers are seeming to like continually just, skirt the rules of the injury report. And I mean,
especially after the CMC thing in week 1, everyone's kind of got the alarms out against the 49ers here too.
Yeah. Hey, but at least they announced they opened Dre Greenlaw's practice report or window. So
the other star linebacker who tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl, if you are not familiar with that name either.
Yeah, so we'll see. Hopefully this is a better game than the 49ers played last week because everyone wants to end Thanksgiving week on Sunday Night Football with a banger. And hopefully it is.
Hope so. The last game, Monday Night Football, is Browns at Broncos. We are live Monday before this game goes on, so we'll have a better idea of if anybody needs anything from that game to win their matchup moving into the last week before the fantasy playoffs. Anything you want to mention about it today or save it for Monday?
Only thing I'll say is I'm not really trying to rely on any Browns. I think this Broncos defense is good. Like, I'm not chasing a Tillman or a Judy this week. If you have to play Chubb, sure, it's not the best matchup. But Bo Nix and Courtland Sutton should definitely still be in your lineup.
Courtland Sutton's a little bit wishy-washy as well, just because he disappears at times, but he's been better of late.
Yeah, since this kind of run for Bo Nix the last 4 weeks, Sutton has been the clear number 1 target. He was a guy that we probably should have talked about more as a potential trade candidate, but he continues to catch touchdowns and put up points, and I think that will continue on Monday night versus the Browns.
It's been nice to see Courtland Sutton coming back into form after years of we knew it was there, but haven't seen it.
All right, George, any other NFL football you want to talk about?
Not today, but want to wish everyone out there a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you get your fill of all the food, get your shopping in on Black Friday, and we'll see you on Cyber Monday too.
Yeah, I mean, George and I will be working, but because we are now, as of today, a college football adjacent podcast, I guess it's kind of rivalry week. That's why Michigan and Ohio State are playing. So which we need to end the big noon kickoff. I'm not going to go on that full rant today, but let's end that. But some other big games, because you asked that question. We got Texas A&M on Saturday night. We got that's probably a big one. We got Clemson, North Carolina, or South Carolina. Which one is it? South Carolina. Always get them confused. 12 versus 15. So a lot of things in the college football playoffs. But more importantly, when you're talking college football, because we are the Couch Jams podcast, it is talking about which of these players are we going to see on our favorite teams next year. Are we going to see Ashton Gentry, Travis Hunters? Where are they going to go? But you can get an early glimpse of them on Saturday, or just hear us talk about them on Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 Eastern. We are the Couch Jams podcast. If you've got questions, follow us on social media and hit us up in our DMs, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, at the Couch GMs. I am Cody Rourke. That is George Kurtz. As he said, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy the football, and we'll talk to you all on Monday.